The movie begins with a terrified man running off into the woods while his wife is shot by two unknown men. In this movie, this man is called the father, and this young man is called Sean, and they are father and son to each other. Sean douses the woman with gasoline, where the father burns the woman to death with the lit cigarette he was smoking a little while ago. After this killing, both the killers go away, but in the distance, a mysterious figure watches this fearful scene, dressed from head to toe in a white robe, with only a black triangle at the center of the face mask. Now the scene shifts to a police officer named Daniel Carter, who is in his squad car at this time on the country road. While talking to his colleague, Daniel finds someone crawling out of the tree line on his hands and knees. Daniel gets off his car and closes in on the unknown man, considering him to be an intoxicated teenager. This is the same man who managed to escape from killers. Daniel discovers the man to be in need of medical help. So he puts him in his car and begins to ask his colleague about the nearest hospital to his current location. The dispatch tells him that the closest hospital may not be ready to cope up with the situation, as it is in the process of closing down after being incinerated by fire, and the next closest hospital is 20 minutes away. So he reluctantly heads towards the only option. He takes the wounded man into the hospital where his Daniel's estranged wife Allison works. Daniel, with the aid of Allison, lays the wounded man on the stretcher and is taken away to get examined. Here, in the hospital, Daniel bumps into Maggie, who is expecting a baby, and her grandfather Ben. In the medical room, the man comes around and begins to panic, but gets put under by Dr. Richard. Dr. Allison finds an ID near the man, revealing his name to be James. Daniel is in another room and chewing the fat with his wife, but this conversation is butt in by Dr. Richard. Allison leaves from there. Dr. Richard asks Daniel to be gentle with Allison as she is coming to terms with what happened. Actually, Daniel and Allison had lost their child, and Allison still has not been able to get over it. Richard tells him that he can feel this pain as he has also lost his daughter named Sarah, and it took me a long time to recover from it. From there, Daniel comes into a ward where Beverly, a nurse, is doing something to the unconscious patient. Daniel sees that Beverly has killed the patient with the medical knife. She turns around with her face covered in blood. She tells Daniel that that is not her face. Saying this, she tries to come at Daniel, but Daniel shoots her to death. Allison and Kim, who is a nursing intern, get in there and get overwhelmed by the scene. Daniel conveys to them that Beverly was going to kill him. He comes directly into the washroom to wash his face. Here, Daniel feels dizziness and later reaches into another world where there is nothing but darkness all around. Just then, Dr. Richard brings him around from his unconsciousness. Now, a detective named Mitchell arrives at the hospital and questions Daniel about the apprehended man. Mitchell informs him that he has found a bloodbath about 20 miles north of there and looks like he has killed his own wife. Daniel comes out of the hospital and gets in his car and tries to contact his colleague, but no one replies from the other end. He finds a mysterious figure standing right in front of his car, dressed in white robe. Daniel gets out of his car and asks the man what he is doing there so late at night. Right then, the power of the hospital cuts off and the mysterious man lays into Daniel with his sharp dagger. The man wearing white robe pierces the dagger into Daniel's chest, wounding him. Somehow, Daniel manages to knock the attacker down and gets up. Daniel discovers many similar men around himself, wearing white robes and a black triangle at the center of the face mask. Immediately, he runs off into the hospital and collapses onto the floor. Allison asks him to keep his eyes on her, while Dr. Richard and Kim doing their level best to prevent the blood loss from the wound. Daniel regains his consciousness and looks through the door and finds those lurking cultists standing still, holding knives outside the hospital. Simultaneously, they hear James screaming in his ward. Mitchell and wounded Daniel reach there and see that some kind of creepy creature is trying to kill James. Mitchell starts shooting the creature while Daniel tries to break the handcuffs of James. He takes James out of the room and shuts the door. Now, everyone in the hospital is freaked out after seeing this. Right then, Father and Sean arrive there, chasing James. Father points his rifle at James while Daniel tries to make peace there. On the other side, Beverly gets uneasy to come through the door. James holds Maggie hostage and asks Father to put the gun down. Dr. Richard tries to bring James around to let Maggie go, but frantic James stabs Dr. Richard, causing him to bleed severely. Uncle Ben knocks James down with a single punch, but in the meantime, Beverly-turned monster attacks Mitchell and drags him away. Grabbing a fire axe, Daniel rushes to save Mitchell but finds the monster destroying Mitchell's eyes with his claws. Then the monster turns his attention to the approaching Daniel and slams him against the wall. Father and Sean arrive there. Father pulls the trigger but the gun is out of bullets. Hence, Sean comes at the monster with the fire axe. Father also reloads his gun and blasts the monster's head off. Following this, the duo goes at the creature with the axes and repeatedly attacks him. They keep on tearing apart his body, but mistakenly, Father chops off Mitchell's head while butchering the creature. Outside, Dr. Richard is also no more. Now, Father and Sean come to Daniel. Father knocks down Daniel as he was preventing him from recovering James. He tells Daniel that no one is going anywhere. The mentally unstable man is about to kill Daniel, but Sean stops him from doing so. Father tells Daniel and Allison that there is something calling those devil worshippers all here. Father and Sean burn the rest of the rotting body of Beverly and send it outside. Kim and Allison come to Maggie, who is having some difficult times at this time. In the environment of fear, Daniel, Sean, and Father venture outside the hospital to get some ammunition, but Daniel's car is parked far away near the tree line. Fortunately, no mysterious men is lurking around, whereas inside the hospital, Maggie is approaching her delivery time. Allison promises her that she and her baby are going to be fine, so she valiantly moves out to obtain some essential medicines for Maggie, risking her life. While outside, Daniel, Sean, and Father get at the car. Daniel begins to look for ammunition while Father and Sean are guarding him from outside. Just then, Father finds a devil worshipper standing far away under a dried tree. Father asks Daniel to hurry up. Daniel turns on the headlight of the car, and he also discovers a horde of the cultists standing in the dark. In the meantime, a cultist falls upon Sean, but Daniel shoots the invader, saving Sean. All of them take to their heels in the blink of an eye and get to the hospital. Having reached there, Daniel asks about his wife Allison. Ben tells him that she has gone to the medical room by herself. Immediately, he sets out to look for Allison, bringing Father along. Both of them walk into a room where a telephone is ringing. Daniel picks up the phone. The person on the other line already knows Daniel. Daniel asks him who he is. Then the caller says, "You already know me." Daniel addresses the caller as Richard, meaning Dr. Richard. Richard says to him, "I know it is very hard to understand how I am still alive." Daniel asks him where Allison is. On this, he replies to him, he is going to help her, signaling he has kidnapped Allison. Father, Sean, and Daniel come to James, who is still handcuffed. After being tortured, James reveals that it is Dr. Richard behind all this. Daniel tells him that Dr. Richard is not dead anymore. How is that possible? Following this, all of them arrive in the basement of the hospital, keeping James at the front. Now the scene shifts to Allison, who has just come around and finds herself in the surgery room. Richard says to her, "You would not be able to move." On this, Allison says to him, "I saw you die." Richard tells her that losing Sarah shattered me, but it also compelled me to find a solution. While looking for Richard, Daniel and others come across a triangle sign drawn on the floor. Father tells Daniel that this was all over the house he and Sean cleaned out. He made us look at things. On the other side, Maggie is having labor pain, so Kim puts her under to take the edge off her pain. Down in the basement, Daniel and others find the same black triangle, which is at the center of the face mask of cultists. Daniel opens the door and gets inside. Devil Richard asks Allison if she knows where she would go when she will die. "You don't, but I do." Richard sheds off his face skin and comes before Allison. Daniel and others find decomposing corpses in the basement, and it seems like Dr. Richard has been slaughtering people and turning them into monster creatures. Here, all the corpses come back to life. Sean starts blowing their heads off one by one, but meanwhile, Father gets possessed and leaves the slaughterhouse. An upside-down dead body also gets back to life and comes at Daniel, but it takes away James. Kim is not able to bring the baby into this world as she is just an intern nurse. Ben forces her to do it, otherwise, Maggie will die. Just then, Ben's neck is silted from behind by Maggie, as she is also possessed now. Terrified, Kim gets away from there with a fire axe. She finds herself squared off by the devil worshippers from all around. Possessed Father charges at Sean and tries to kill him, saying, "I wasn't there, so you should have protected your mother." Sean brings him back to reality by lighting up a cracker. Father apologizes to him for making an attempt to kill him. Holding an axe, Daniel is searching for Allison and approaches the surgery room. he quietly opens the door and finds Allison lying on the surgery table. She tells him that she can feel it coming. Daniel holds her hand, but then Richard says Daniel's name and tells him that he knows his dark secret. Daniel sees that Richard has turned Allison into a tentacled monster. Through his voice, he tells Daniel has given Allison what she wanted. Despite this breaking down situation, Daniel manages to pull himself together and begins to tear Allison apart before she fully transforms into a monster. Now, we see a triangle in a room with dead bodies placed on the tables. Daniel approaches the triangle, but is stabbed in the back by the possessed Maggie. Daniel collapses on the floor. Maggie walks to the triangle, and now the devil Richard shows up there. He says to Daniel, "You are going to witness my daughter's rebirth." At this time, Richard's worshippers can also be seen standing to his left and right. Devil Richard sits on his knees and starts opening the triangle-shaped portal, through which a bright light begins to come to this side. Maggie asks the devil to bless her baby. Devil Richard places his hand on Maggie's head and requests the triangle to place his daughter into Maggie's body. Soon Maggie brings herself back to the real world and recoils while screaming. Her belly bursts open and a monster comes out. It is Richard's daughter Sarah. It explodes one of the worshippers' heads with her foot. Father and Sean shoot the monster, but the bullets have no effect on her. The creature knocks down Father with its tentacles and begins to suck his blood through his tentacles. Father starts dousing his own body with gasoline and asks Sean to set fire to him, otherwise the creature will kill you too. Sean reluctantly burns his father, causing the monster to get burned as well. Wounded, Daniel pulls himself together and lays into the devil with the axe, but he is not affected by it at all. Daniel puts him through the triangle, taking him into the other world. Now the triangle also disappears and the whole building starts collapsing. Allison, who is now a full monster, chases Sean to snuff him out, but just in time, Sean makes his escape, but Allison, now a monstrous figure, gets crushed between the shrinking walls. In the closing scene of the movie, we see Daniel and Allison together in another world, where there is nothing but darkness and giant pyramids everywhere. Both of them see a colossal pyramid before them, and with this scene, this movie comes to an end.